not a newbie at all. And so we just thought it'd be really lovely to just kind of share some of this topic, and some of the conversations that Sarah and I were having were like, this would be really good to just share with the community. So I'll let Sarah just introduce herself a bit further as well.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, as Parek and Chaya have said, I have been a freelance marketing copywriter for over 20 years. I think this is my 21st. My business is the same age as my oldest child, and that's not a coincidence. Yeah, I wrote survival skills for freelancers purely because it took me about 15 years to get good at the business end of freelance life. So the book basically shares the learnings that I've discovered for myself during my 20+ year career. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to answer some of your questions during the session today.
Cool, thanks. So yeah, we've got a loose agenda. We've got 3 kind of topics that we thought we'd cover. So the first one is about community, and how we kind of build ourselves a people around us. When we're independent, we can often feel a bit isolated. So we'll talk a little about that. Another topic that we wanted to touch on was about how to get business, and that's something that a lot of people are asking about, and the conversation always kind of comes back to. And then lastly, just touching on some of the really good things about being freelance that we can often forget when we're kind of in the throes of it. This is hopefully quite an interactive session, so use the chat box loads. I mean, just put in questions, and we'll try and keep an eye on that, and hopefully Porrick, you can give us a stab if we're missing any really good questions. Cool. So, and I wanted to just kick off with a bit of a question. So there's a poll which hopefully Porrick will just pop up there for us. And I just wanted to get a gauge a little bit about the audience. I mean, how long you guys have been in the game or not. Myself, as I said, I'm really new to this, and there was a lot of things that I wish I'd known, and if I could have told myself back in the days when I started, which is not that long ago. And I actually dug out. I have a little file that I keep of all the lessons that I've learned, and I went back to my very first 3 months setting up my business, and I wrote a list of some of the things that I wish that were my lessons from that first quarter. And it was stuff like, my website is good enough as it is, don't tinker. Invoicing, I'd learned how to with certain types of clients keep consulting. Oh, thank you, Porrick. So yeah, we got a big majority, 44% of us are not freelancing yet, but would like to be. I'm glad there's 9% of pros as well. So we need the pros to help guide us who are kind of fairly new. And a little bit of a balance on some of those very, very experienced as well. That's nice to know. Yeah. So yeah, some of the other things on my kind of list is always contract in. And one of my favorites is don't watch Netflix. I think I'd started watching Outlander when I started my business. It was a disaster. So yeah, so I think then let's just get into it. I mean, let's start to talk a little bit about community. And I think so, Sarah, this is one of the first few things that you touch on in your book. And I know when I moved out of being in a team and being in a large organization, I really felt that kind of isolation of being by myself. And I sat in my room by myself and went, oh, is this it? So, what advice do you think would be really helpful for folks who are just feeling that big contrast?
Yeah, I think the thing for me was I had been working in a publishing agency, magazine publisher. And so I came from a busy, buzzy agency background with lots of banter and lots of chat. And that was one of the hardest things, undoubtedly, about first going freelance. So Yeah, that's alarming. It's done that thing where it's made my face big on the screen. Don't want that. So yeah, it was certainly something that I really struggled with to begin with. And I think back then it was all the more difficult to compare to how the situation that we find ourselves in now, because there was no social media. There was barely any internet. I think the first thing to crop up was Friends Reunited or something like that. I don't think that was particularly supportive from a business perspective. But nowadays we have the ability to connect in so many ways, thanks to the internet, particularly at the moment where various stages of lockdown in various areas. And right now, even if you're still employed, you may find yourself working from home and facing a lot of the same issues of loneliness and isolation. But as Chaya said, pretty much the first section, the first myth that I bust in the book is that going solo doesn't mean going it alone. And it's really, really important to harness the power of the community that is out there. There are various different ways in which you can do this, including things like membership organizations like CIPR, the things like Facebook groups, which is actually one of the only things I actually enjoy about Facebook, things like Slack groups that sometimes exist for freelancers, Twitter chats, so Twitter hours. I don't know if any of you have discovered those, but things like hashtag freelance chats, which is once a week. It's a great way of getting to know other people who are in the same boat as you. And it's a great way of getting advice and support on the issues that you may feel you're going through alone, to realize that actually we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat to a greater or lesser degree.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I worked out or spent a bit of time working out at the beginning was who even is my community, because, and it depends on your kind of business, right? Because I'm a communication consultant, but I'm also a coach, and that's a big part of my business. So I actually found like there's a community of people who are coaches, and there's a community of people who are communication professionals who are kind of my people. And it was a bit of kind of, it took a bit of working out to find out, well, who are my people? And please do use the chat box and share your tips as well. I mean, like, how have you found your community, and who is your community? You know, what does that kind of mean to you? Because I think that's something that's really different for everybody. And I've been really blessed to have really good connects when I've kind of got myself out there. One of the things I started doing at the beginning as well is going to conferences. So wherever I've gotten to conferences and been able to connect with people, and that's just like this organic kind of connect. So in the US, Ari's just sharing usmeetup.com. That sounds really helpful as well. So it's finding like-minded people in the places where you would hang out. And also I think in the style that you like to hang out. Like, I'm a LinkedIn person, and I think for some people are Twitter people, you know, like finding the medium that works for you as well. And that's besides running the business, because I think running the business and the client connections is a different type of connect to what you want is like a community and a feel of like, who do I go to if I want to just bounce some ideas, or just feeling a little like I need support. So.
Yeah. What's nice about that also is the fact that quite often you might start off with the intention of trying to find a community of like-minded professionals that you feel you fit in with and are dealing with the same sorts of issues as you are. But actually, you might find that you do end up indirectly getting business from them, because the more you share about what sort of work you enjoy doing the most and the sorts of businesses that you help, the more you'll find you get referrals from that community, and even sometimes members of the community themselves, as long as they're not doing exactly the same work as you are. Sometimes people will come to you and say, oh, you know, could you help me out with this project? Could we collaborate? And that's sort of a side benefit of it for sure.
Yeah.
Sarah, some interesting comments coming in there just on some of the points that you're making. So from NA there, former colleagues are also a really good group to keep in contact with. They've maintained relationships with former team members they've managed over the years. And it's really great if you're feeling unsettled. These people are great for giving you a view maybe back of what you're capable of as they've worked with you before. I think that's a really nice comment. And one from James Goffin here. There are some local CIPR social meetups, not exclusively for freelance, but include some. That's another idea for people. And I'd actually agree with a lot of what you said there as well. Before I moved to the UK, when I was in Ireland, I got involved virtually a lot on Twitter with like the IC crowd. So then when I moved to the UK, I actually felt I did know, the way a network of internal comms and engagement people in the UK, albeit virtually. So I can certainly vouch for that point you're making about the power of online and social.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, thanks. And I've also noticed that I think Emma has sent me a comment with a question: how do you find the balance between community and competition? That's actually such a valid point, because I think it's all too easy to fall into kind of a position of fear and think, oh, well, they're also, in my case, so that person is also a copywriter, but I'm actually part of two different separate copywriting mastermind groups. We all do the same work, but equally, we all have preferences. We all refer work to one another. We all support one another. We share rates. If we've got a project that's a little out of the ordinary, we might kind of go, oh, hey, I've been asked about this. I'm thinking of charging X. What do you guys think? So I don't see other copywriters as my competition at all. I am very much of an abundance mindset, and I think it's really important to accept that there is, thanks Ari, that there is plenty of work out there for everybody. And I think that the more you can kind of adopt that mindset, the more that appears to be true. So yeah, I hope I didn't go too much off tangent then.
Yeah, I think it's something valuable to mention. And I saw also from C.A. McLean, sorry, I don't know your first name, but you mentioned that feeling of loneliness. And I think that when you're connecting with your community, you really have to be able to be yourself. Now, if we're trying to compete against each other, or we're trying to look for business and we're using that as a space to kind of pitch for business, we're not quite at ease. And that sense of community is less what it should be, which is that supportive and kind of open environment. And I know that I've stepped into areas where I felt it was a bit competitive, or felt it was a bit salesy, and I've actually taken myself out of that, because for me, I need a community which feels warm, and that I can belong there, and that I can be myself. Because we don't have a coffee corner with our teams and our colleagues who we've been working with for years to just pop over to anymore. And certainly COVID and our lockdown situation has kind of accentuated any kind of loneliness that we feel. So I think it's something to really be just really mindful of, and a lot of love for that abundance mindset.
Oh, good stuff. I think, Chaya, that is such an important point. It is kind of, sometimes it does take time to find the right group. I've certainly found certain Facebook groups tend to be a little bit less supportive, or perhaps there are more people in there who don't really get the way to build your community is not to go on there and go, hey, I'm Sarah, I do this, let me write your website for you, or whatever. It's really important to think about giving before you take. So if you can add value to the process, and you can be generous with your advice and with your support, and you are giving as much to the community as you're looking to take, that's the sort of situation that you find yourself in, that you will actually be the first person who springs to mind, when someone else is part of the community. So, well, I'm sure Sarah mentioned something about that the other day, or ran a poll or something like that. So it is important to kind of approach it with the right mindset. And I think not going into that situation and going, what can I get out of this? But perhaps thinking first about delivering value and what you can give. I think that's really important, really key.
Yeah. And that mindset's really hard to foster when you're not in an abundant state. And I think you get to know yourself really, really well. And I've learned what I'm like when I don't have money coming in, or when an assignment ends and there's some real discomfort and a slight desperation that happens to me, and I have to hold it in. And because I know and I learned this in my first year when setting up, was I became more sort of aggressive, and not aggressive necessarily, but I was needy. Because I what I was doing was attaching my own worth to the business that
Yeah.
I've got coming in, and that's recipe for disaster.
Mm.
The cash flow of my business is not a reflection of how who I am as a person. But it's taken some time to really get to know that about myself and know where I'm going to go when the money starts to dry up, and be mindful of that. And having that community around you actually helps, because you can go in and say this stuff and share with people that this is what's going on with you, and folks can go, oh my god, yeah, me too, and here's how I deal with it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such an important point. It's all very, very easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, adopt an abundance mindset, but it is a needy position to be in, and it is quite scary when you don't know where the next job or the next project or the next client is coming from. However, in so many times in the past 20 years, over the past 20 years, I have been in that position where work has been dry, or I feel like I'm approaching a dry spell, and all my energy is directed at the lack of work. And it's weird. It's almost as if it sort of self-perpetuates, because the more I used to focus, it hasn't happened for many years now, but the more I used to focus on what I didn't have, the more I would have even less, if that makes sense. So it's almost like I found that I had to distract myself from that position of kind of, because then when you do get work through, or potential work, you're almost like you'd say anything and do anything to actually get that project. And that's not a comfortable, ideal position to start a relationship with a client. You don't want kind of them to be up here dictating terms and you're down here. You want to be on a level with them. You want to be an even partnership. So I think it's really important to have, perhaps, this is a slight tangent, but it's useful, honest. It's important to have perhaps a list of things that you want to focus on in terms of professional development and personal development, and things you want to do to improve your business from an investing time in your business sort of phase. So perhaps you've got, you want to build up a bank of blog posts that you can share. You want to work on content for your social media. You want to tighten up and improve your LinkedIn profile and your bios across social, work on your website, perhaps approach people to interview you for podcasts, whatever it is. If you have this list that when you do get quiet, you can hop over, it changes your mindset from being one of kind of paralyzing fear to one of opportunity. And as soon as you start, it's amazing how often this happens. As soon as you start focusing on those things you think, I never have time to do this stuff, it's like something shifts, and then suddenly the work starts coming in. It sounds a bit woo-woo, but it has proved time and time again to be the case. I don't know if anybody else has found that.
Yeah, I think it's starting to answer the question that Sonal is asking about, any tips on self-doubt and low confidence. I think that's exactly it. A tip I have, and I'm looking over here because I have a little sticker up on my wall, and I have 5 words on there, and it says focus, resilience, abundance, love, and a very woo-woo word, which is goddess. But I built that list from a moment when I was having low confidence and a bit of self-doubt, more than a bit of self-doubt, and it was from a coaching friend, so it helps that, and I recognize Chris is here as well, who's also a coaching buddy, but I know that through kind of this tips and tools that we have as coaches, like some of this really works, and the language that we're using, so just notice what you're saying. What are you saying to yourself? And I found that my language was around lack of work, lack of money, lack of motivation, I had like a scattered approach, and I wasn't focused. So the word focus, and reminding myself that I'm an incredibly resilient person, and I have those words stuck up on my wall. And at the moments when I'm feeling that bit of self-doubt or low confidence, I can just glance over and go, this is the stuff you're going to manifest. This is what you focus on. This is the stuff that's going to pop up in your life. And it's funny, once I put that up there and started working, because it's fine to have the list, but you've got to work towards it, right? So you've got to actually do stuff that is about focus. You have to actually work on your resilience, actually do stuff every day. And then work came in. And it's about what you're putting out there. One realization was, if you don't put work out there, and we're starting to actually get into our second topic, which is about how to get business. So it'd be lovely to also move to that. One of the things I realized is that if I do nothing, and this was one of my learnings in my first quarter, was if you do nothing, you will get nothing. So that you actually have to do something to get work. So yeah, Sarah, please do expand on that.
Yeah, amen to that. I think this is another thing that, I don't know, Chaya, are you kind of ready to move on to the second topic? Because I don't want to take you on if you're not quite ready. So
I think so. And I'm just reading through some of the comments. And yeah, so I love the mention of the imposter syndrome. It's a huge topic, and I'm so glad we mentioned that. Sandy, thank you for your name.
On imposter syndrome in survival skills. It's chapter 8 if you fancy checking it out.
I would also plug, so we've got Advita on the line as well.
Oh, amazing.
And Advita's our head of our CIPR Inside, and she's also a huge expert on the imposter syndrome and talks, I say that, but she just talks really openly about it and just shares a lot. And she's just recently done a few webinars. I don't know, Advita, if you've got some links that you could pop into the chat, that would also be great, because the more we talk about
sorry Chaya, I missed a beginning bit about imposter syndrome.
Yeah, we've got a few tips, and it's really about kind of how do you deal with those moments of self-doubt, and especially when we're sort of on our own, and how we can use community.
Yeah. I won't go into too much detail in here, but there is a slight difference between self-doubt, confidence, and imposter syndrome. But I will share some links with everybody in the chat in where they can find out more information. But what I say to everybody, especially as freelancers, that self-doubt is a part of imposter syndrome, but imposter syndrome is something that you really need to work on and think about what your triggers are in terms of your imposter. So what is it that's causing you to feel that way? And so I've been doing research in this over the last few years. One of the things that you need to think about is from your childhood. And I know that sounds really quite deep and meaningful, but it'll be a trigger from your childhood that's made you think about your imposter right now. But I will share some links in that chat for anybody who wants to know more, and a couple of blogs as well.
Great stuff. Yeah, it sounds like Advita has done kind of more sort of scientific research on it, whereas what I share in here is very much based on my own experience, kind of backed up by research. So I share 6 different strategies to tackle self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and one of them is to keep talking. So don't feel like you're the only person going through this. Everybody goes through it, and anybody who doesn't admit that they question, why do I, what makes me think that, I'm not the expert at this, whereas from my perspective, I don't have a degree in imposter syndrome, but I've had 20 years of experience of it. And I think, Chaya, I fully understand what you said about your self-esteem being connected to your worth as a freelancer. And yeah, I've very much experienced that feeling of not having enough work, and then suddenly I'm feeling rubbish about myself, and then when I'm busy again, then feeling on top of the world. But yeah, there are 6 strategies and kind of actionable tips that you can put into use.
And I would just pick up again, Charid actually mentioned here that getting a coach and looking for communities that have that element of coaching and support. And when it is something that you're really digging up from your past, it will carry on coming back up again if and I know myself, my things that stand in my way, emotionally when they come up every time I'm out of work, or every time I'm told no. Oh, it's been lovely to hear your pitch. We really like you. However, at this time, and it's not a personal thing, but I know the triggers and defaults, but the more I have come across those, I get better and better at dealing with them. So you kind of have to hit those failures to learn something from it as well.
Yeah. Failure is so important. You fail, you learn, you grow, ultimately. And if you're not putting yourself out there, you're not taking risks, then you're not going to grow. So another thing that's really important is that comparisonitis that we all experience from time to time. And I don't know about you guys, but social media, I find, can be a real trigger for that, particularly Instagram for some reason. I don't know if it's because it's visual and there are loads of videos of people kind of doing exciting things and smashing it and whatever. So I find that from time to time, it's good, if you are finding self-doubt is getting the better of you, just give yourself, say, a couple of days of social media detox. I think the platforms aren't, whatever you think, I think the platforms will survive without you for a couple of days, and it's really good to kind of focus on your well-being and protect your energy in that way.
Yeah,
I'm sounding really woo-woo. I'm talking loads about energy, but it is really important.
Sarah, Chaya, I think what we'll do is, will we move on to the next topic, the next area, just because we're halfway through. So much comments and conversation, and Avita is starting to share some links there as well. It's really, really good.
Brené Brown, yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, we love her. So yeah, the next topic was to just start talking a little bit about how to get business. And like when I set up, I had a lot of questions about this, and I found my way and found a lot of advice from others who are around me. And now I'm in it almost 2 years. I get asked, well, how do you get business? And how do you find clients? That's one of the most common questions I get asked. So please do, especially those who are kind of a bit more experienced, do pop in your tips on how do you get business. What have been your real learnings and bits of advice to share with the community? And Sarah, what are your tips?
I think one thing that is really, because this is the perennial question, right? When you're running your own business, where does the business and the clients come from? And one of the things that I think is really overlooked is the power of word of mouth. I read a statistic that 75% of people don't trust what they read in ads, but 92% of people trust a recommendation from a friend. So it's really important, first and foremost, to put yourself out there. If you're not out there, how is anybody going to know that you exist and the skills that you can bring to the table? And it's just not good enough to, however great your website is, it's not good enough to just have a website and go, well, I'm out there, I'm on Google. You know, it doesn't, you know, if you build it, they will come. It's not quite that powerful. So put yourself out there, and don't be afraid. I think also to two-part tip here. I think certainly we've already talked about the power of community. Another really important thing to do is to lean on the community, and don't be afraid to tell people if you are struggling for work at the moment and you could use more work in this field or that field. People love to help people in the main, and I think actually the communities that we build around us tend to be very generous. I'm thinking, for example, of a couple of people I know who have put out there on LinkedIn that they have lost their job after being furloughed, and they were short of work and they were looking for work in this particular field, and they had so many people sharing the post and tagging in people who might be able to help. So that's the first one. And the second one, don't be afraid to ask your clients, the people who know how good you are at your job, right? Don't be afraid to ask them to refer you to people that they know, people within their own network and their own community. And also on the same lines, kind of exploit the fact that you can get people to write recommendations for you. So ask for recommendations on LinkedIn or on Google or whatever your chosen platform that you prefer to share those on. People generally love writing recommendations. I just find when you kind of finish a project with somebody and you know that it's worked really well for them, it's had some really positive results, that's a great time to say, well, do you know what, this email is great, this is fantastic feedback to have, would you mind putting this in a quick testimonial so I can share that and hopefully find new clients that way?
Yeah, I have to say there's two pieces of work that I got purely on the basis of putting stuff out there. And not just stuff, but really stuff that was a reflection of who I am. So one of them is I put up a post just on LinkedIn, and it was just about, it was my own kind of reflection on the kind of work I've done with coaching recently, and it was about getting unstuck. And I immediately got a client from that, and that was purely because I really believed in it, and I could speak honestly about that topic. The other was around bias, and I was just talking really passionately because it's something that really affected me in the recent issues around the world, and I started to speak kind of openly about it, and I got a few speaking opportunities from that, and it was, if I had tried to put on a kind of painted picture of how a client would like to receive my services, then I wouldn't have really been able to really get the type of business that I wanted. The other thing I kind of realized, and I spoke to a friend, so again, community really helps, but I have a friend who is a digital marketing expert, and she runs her own business in this way. And so I was just having a talk to her about kind of all this social media marketing. And she's like, hold on a minute, that's all social media. Like, what about your like face-to-face, or as we're not face-to-face, but like one-to-one, and the relationships that you're building, like, where are they? And I'm like, oh yeah. And I'd met with at least 2 or 3 folks who were potential clients, but had said, oh, not for now, but I could go back to them. So like the no that I got 6 months ago might not necessarily be a no now. And it's about fostering those sort of relationships that I didn't really realize. And one of them, not turned into business yet, but I'm keeping optimistic. But there's potential, and then it is about the attitude that I go into it. And like, don't go in with a scarcity mindset when I go and have that conversation, but be more like, look, I've got some stuff to offer, and are there challenges that you have that my services could be a solution to? But not focus on, oh, give me business, but more be like, hey, this is me, here's the stuff I'm really good at, here's some people who also say I'm good at it, and previous clients that I've worked with, examples of work. But having that ready, I think when you just go in cold in a conversation without a plan, like, it's not like you've got you're trying to sales pitch them, but like knowing how to articulate your worth helps you to then go into those conversations.
Chaya, some comments coming in there,
Yeah.
agreeing with what you and Sarah have said. Sorry, it's just dropped up there. One from Kirsty, agree with Sarah. All my work in 10 plus years has come from colleagues or through networks and communities. And she keeps her social media up to date. Ari has said, always ask existing clients, do you know anyone else who could use my help? Avita is recommending the PR Freelancer group on Facebook, and Lisa Fleming has said, totally agree, relationships. I have just secured 2 great pieces of work, but it has taken 8 months of nurturing relationships on and off social. And I can agree with that as well. So I'm not freelance, but I'm more interim, and I think it's a constant loop. I'm very much agreeing and nodding my head with what both of you are saying. It could be somebody I fostered a relationship with 4 years ago who comes along and says to me, I have 3 months or 6 months work. I might be in a position where I don't need work, but it's just about having a genuine interest, as Chaya said, in how you can help people, and an interest in their teams and their work and what their challenges are. And long term, it helps to sustain you, whether you need work at a particular time, or whether they actually come to you then at a time where you're actually open to take on more clients.
Yeah, what just one of the words really stood out for me then, Porrick, certainly the word genuine. I think people are a little bit afraid sometimes of being completely real in a business scenario. I've never really understood that. Someone who read my book was kind of like, oh, what was your, I was taking part in a Q&A like this and said, what was behind the decision to be so authentically you in the book? And I said, it wasn't a decision, it wasn't a choice, it's the only way I know how to be. So I think I may come across people who think, oh, you know, she's a bit too kind of I'm high energy, or I'm like on bricks on the driveway, literally there's no middle ground, and that's not for everybody. And I'm also quite a challenger with my clients, so if a business wants somebody who's a yes person, I always warn them at the start and say, look, if you think you need this, and I think there's a better way of achieving your goal, then I will suggest. But you know, the idea of good marketing is that it doesn't just attract the clients who are right for you and your business, it also does just as much to repel the people who aren't a good fit with your business. And I think it's a really important realization that you're never going to be a perfect fit with everybody. You ideally want to attract the people who are going to value you and work on this kind of partner basis, rather than treating you as a supplier and not really valuing the work that you bring to the table and not really paying you adequately. It's all about kind of looking for all the good stuff in the client relationships, isn't it?
Chaya, I think we'll wrap up this one and move on. It's just we're into the last 15 minutes, to give you 10 minutes for the final topic and some questions.
Yeah, so I just wanted to actually bridge from that to the next question.
Oh, perfect.
So because what you said there is really like, actually you don't want that client that's not a good fit for you, and that's for me, that has been one of the main reasons that I wanted to set up my own business, is that I had a really strong sense of what kind of communications work I wanted to be doing and what kind of coaching work I want to be doing. And I think one of the benefits of being freelance is that you get to decide the vibe that you create around who you are as that coach, consultant, whatever, however you define yourself. And it's a freedom to pitch yourself at the kind of work you want to be doing. And that's not freedom that I felt when I was in-house. I was given work, I was, had responsibilities, certain tasks that had to be done, and groups that I had to work with, whether that was my choice or not. And I think the choice, so as we get into that next question around what are all the really great things that we forget, because when we're tied up in trying to get business and trying to run the business, doing the client work, we forget. It's quite natural to, but we can forget really some of the really great things about being independent and a freelancer. So what have your top things been? So please put your top great things about being a freelancer into the chat. And Sarah, what are your top favorite things?
I think a lot of the top amazing things about being freelance have a real flip side to them. So things like the accountability. Nobody else is accountable for how you divide up your week and your day, but on the flip side, no one else is accountable for how you divide up your day. So I think it's really important not to kind of get off one treadmill, the treadmill of employment, and find yourself on a completely different treadmill when you become freelance. So it's always really important to bear in mind that we are our own boss. Like, keep that in mind. It sounds really obvious, but otherwise you're going to find that you're giving your power away to all these different clients and they all become a load of mini bosses. So yeah, certainly the control over the way you spend your time, the control over investing in your business, I am a big control freak, so all those things really appeal to me. But certainly the flexibility and the variety is just incredible. The learning curve, getting to know so many new clients and new businesses and learning about different fields, that for me is a huge bonus. Plus getting to meet great people all the time.
Yeah, I think flexibility is a word that's coming out a lot in the chat. So that's certainly, and the freedom. A lot of the choices for the first comment I heard from Katie was choice. I mean, it is, and I think one thing that happens, at least to me, is I start to feel guilty when I make choices, and I've learned not to allow that guilt to stop me from doing it anyway. I can have a little moment of guilt and then go, do you know what? I work hard for this, so yes, I deserve it. And another one is actually just treating yourself sometimes, like. And it's stupid, but I'm going to treat myself to a new keyboard. Like, not a big thing, but I can do that.
Too.
The variety of work as well.
It's not just even just treating yourself to physical things. It's kind of treating yourself to time off. Like this morning, I normally start work at about 7, but this morning I thought, right, I've got lots of exciting kind of live things going on today. I'm going to go for a swim first thing. So I walked up my gym, swam half a mile, walked back, and it kind of started my day in a really positive, productive sort of way. So I think treating yourself with kind of little self-care things is really important for your well-being and your mental health overall.
Yeah, I love Jerry's comment here about being able to juggle a few different priorities, and she says she's been able to chair the governing body of a large secondary school. Like, well done. But a lot of those things, when you have a boss and you have somebody who you're working for, they get to decide whether that's a commitment you can take on or not. And so it's great that we can make those sorry, Jerry, it's he. So I think that it is that benefit of not having a boss, and that you do get to decide, and that you make decisions that are right for you, for your business, and you have that sense of responsibility. But if you're not able to work because you've burnt yourself out, that's not very good use of your employee.
It's really easy to take on too much work, and I find I'm naturally quite an obsessive person, so there are all these things that I want to be doing, and I find that I don't overwork because I feel pressure from my clients to do it. I overwork because I'm putting pressure on myself. So I set myself ridiculous kind of business development-y type of goals, and I'm kind of like, oh well, I just wanted to finish it, oh I just wanted to do this, so I'll find I'm kind of working in the evening when my son's with his dad, and then I kind of think, okay, when I'm accountable for my own time, I have to be very strict with myself, because I just get so excited about what I do and I love what I do. So it's a different type of overwhelm, I think, there.
Yeah, I love Lucy's, the achievements are yours, and that feels good. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. And celebrate your wins as well, even if you've had what you would consider to be quite a tough day, or you don't feel like you've made much progress. I tried to get hashtag 3 small wins trending on Twitter at the start of lockdown. Didn't get anywhere, but when my partner is here staying over, we always end the day with 3 good things and 3 small wins, however tiny they may be. It's just a really good way of focusing on the positive.
That's a really good bridge to kind of start to open up a little bit if there are any questions. So there's 10 minutes left. I wanted to do a bit of a last poll, but in the meantime, so I don't know, Porrick, could you put up the last poll, because I wanted to just get an idea about some of the topics that well, first of all, would we like to have this kind of a connect again? Is this something that is helpful? Was this format useful? So please do
Chaya, the poll will only let me ask multiple choice questions as opposed to free text. However, if you want to put the questions out there, we'll be following up after this call, either later this evening or tomorrow, with a link to the recording, the resources we've shared and links. And what we'll do is we'll have a short survey on how people found this session today, and we'll have a free text comment box in there. If we were to hold this again, what would people like to see covered? So yeah, let's do it like that.
So I think if you want to send a private message, if it's something that you don't want to put onto the chat, but what kind of topics, what's on your minds? I mean, just pop in any topics or any questions for the last few minutes of the call.
We've one there, Chaya from Kirsty, would love for regular webinars like this, could cover different topics and speakers each time. Tom said, yes, thank you, really useful. I think the question was asked earlier from Samantha. Does anyone have any thoughts on whether there'll be more or fewer opportunities for freelance in the future post-pandemic? That's actually a really topical question. If either of you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it is super topical, and I've read so many articles kind of claiming that freelance is the future. Just going to name drop the fact that I was mentioned in one in Forbes last week, and that was kind of basically sorry, I'm just ridiculously excited about it, but yeah, certainly a lot of publications are basically talking at the moment about the fact that a lot of organizations and businesses are making their permanent staff redundant, and then a lot of them are then hiring back those staff as consultants and freelancers. So it does seem to be kind of a lower risk way for businesses in a lot of ways, and there are obviously a lot of positives about hiring freelancers, not all of them particularly positive to us in the fact that we don't get paid pension or holiday time or sick leave. But it's great for the business. It keeps their headcount completely flexible. So it's really easy to see why that is seems to be a growing trend.
Yeah, and I would say one of the benefits I found. So I'm based in the Netherlands, and I've had work in the UK, Norway, Germany. One of the things about being available and being flexible is that you can open up to different markets, and you can open up to client bases that that you might not have considered before, even into areas that you might not have. And that flexibility is something that's quite appealing for businesses as well. I do think that COVID itself has thrown up a whole bunch of things, but with a financial crisis on the we're on the edge of something big. And if we're not in it already, it's certainly going to be good to know where you stand in that point. So, and let's see here.
Somebody, I can't actually read, is it Lisa, mentioned about IR35 stemming, the businesses making people redundant and then hiring them as consultants. Yes, I didn't make that clear enough. I guess I mean that I don't mean making people redundant with the intention of hiring them back as a consultant. It's just kind of making their headcount more flexible. So they may not be able to continue to employ so many full-time staff, but at least the freelance pool is growing. And certainly the feedback I've had recently in some of the reviews for the book has been, I was on furlough, I was thinking of setting up my own business, now I've lost my job, and and
I would also just caution, and although it might be that there are more opportunities for freelancers, doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be working at the same rate. One things that unfortunately we with that flexibility is that we may end up doing a 2-day a week or 3-day a week, or sometimes just far more flexible, and equating that to what does it give you, what else does that give you in life, like what other abilities are there, that flexibility. And we've had this talk about 4-day working week for ages, and then like, what do we do with that other day? Well, freelancers have plenty of things, and having more than one string to your bow is certainly a good way to combat that. So when my consulting work dried up when COVID hit, I had a coaching business to fall back on. So what's your other strings to your bow? What else could you be doing when one market dries up? If you're in a certain field that I don't know, for example, oil and gas for me was where I came from. When that industry is under strain, I actually got hired by Amazon, which was booming. So these two kind of offset each other. So having a look at what plans you make for your business that allow you to be that flexible. We've got a few other tips in the chat as well. Katie's got lots of clients in the US and Canada, so yeah, one of the things that, yeah, the time difference actually gives us time to get a lot of the work done. So when they wake up in the morning, in their inbox is a bunch of deliverables, bits of work.
It's good news from Kirsty saying that more opportunities as a freelancer, and certainly in the circles that I kind of move in my own communities, that seems to have been the case for a lot of people. They may have experienced an initial sort of dip in the first couple of weeks due to, I think, that kind of fear of the unknown and the kind of settling as we all got used to, well, what the heck do we do now? And certainly from my own perspective, some of my regular clients went quiet and have now come back. But in the meantime, there were other businesses who were perhaps a little bit more ahead of the game and thinking ahead and thinking, right, well, this is a great opportunity to get our website sorted or to really focus on our marketing. All these things that can actually give them a head start over the competition. Mm-hmm. So it's just the opportunities are still there, but they may be different opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. So we only have 2 or 3 minutes left, and I wanted to just make sure that we have enough time to just let you know where you can get in touch with us. So Sarah, maybe if anybody was interested and would like to be in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I'll just I'll share some links to the socials that I use the most are LinkedIn and Twitter. So I've just shared a link to those. I'll put my own website in there as well. And in case anybody's interested, a link to the book.
Oh, nice.
That's my productivity tip, is use text replacement on your computer and your phone, because it took me about 3 seconds to type those because I've got them all saved with shortcuts. But that's a whole different webinar. Productivity.
I'm going to just pop in there my LinkedIn and my Twitter if anybody wants to get in touch, and particularly if you want to share any ideas for next topics, because if this is something that you guys are interested in and would like another one, we'd be really happy to look for another topic to focus on. We covered 3 very broad sort of topics, but also any comments that you have about the timing, if lunchtime is also really good for you as well, and that would be good. And what we will do as well is follow up with, so we're recording this session and we'll follow up with a recording and a link. And I think, Porrick, will we also add the links that others have shared in this chat, because there's quite a few.
Yeah, we will. I'm just literally copying and pasting them out before we end in 2 minutes time. Yeah, so give us maybe a day and we'll just put all those together, folks, and get them into a nice email along with the survey and download the recording, and we'll get a nice package of resources out to you.
Yeah, great. And Dan's just reminded us, if you're in the CIPR, if you're a member, you can get 5 CPD points for this webinar as well. So make sure you claim those.
Right. Can I just say, if anybody does fancy connecting on Twitter or LinkedIn, do just drop me a note and just say that you were at the session, and if there was anything you particularly enjoyed, just so I know where you're coming from, because you know what it's like when you get the sort of random ones. I've tried to keep a note of people's names, but I'm sure I've missed a couple.
Great.
Lovely.
Thank you. So just want to say thank you to Sarah and for all her expertise, and of course please do get in touch with her. I would also like to say thanks to Porrick for all of your support here and just keeping an eye on that chat. It's been great. Thanks to all of you for your chats and your comments here. It's really been helpful to get some interaction, and good to see those of you put your videos on, and no worries to those who need to get on with their lunch, and it's been lovely to have you here, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.